An afternoon funeral darkens early, 6 empty minutes on the camera, and a mysterious adjustment powerful enough to silence every witness. That's all that remains after Samantha's shocking death. Accident or orchestration? A special addendum triggers the moment she is no longer able to speak, a payout flows into a fund bearing the victim's name, and a strange perfume trail points straight to door 3 at 2:14. In this video, we'll retrace each link in the chain, from the 1.4-second airbag timing skew in the data sanitation invoice that matches the blackout window, to the hidden hand-annotated draft where Samantha wrote "never sign without an independent audit." Who profits when truth is locked away? Is Pamela merely the gatekeeper, or is there a handler rewriting history with exactly 6 minutes of nothing? Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and get ready, because what you're about to see may turn a so-called accident into the most intricate crime map Fairmont Crest has ever seen. The funeral unfolded on an afternoon that darkened earlier than usual. White wreaths lined up like milestones marking a road Samantha had traveled too quickly, and no one in Fairmont Crest could agree that everything ended as neatly as the coroner's report insisted. Because the very moment the chapel screen reflected her composed face, Andre received a thin envelope, inside only a USB with 6 minutes of rain in a parking lot, a 6-minute void that the security report labeled a technical glitch, though every instinct in him screamed that someone had stepped through that fissure in time to press confirm on a special agreement, an addendum that had never existed on paper yet sat perfectly in the system, a silence clause triggered when the drafter could no longer speak, a lawful latch slamming shut like a lid, turning every question into an off-season echo down the corridor. Andre remembered the meeting before the crash, when Samantha spoke of a new adjustment to the trust, weighing the deletion of an odd back-end payout, then fell suddenly quiet as Pamela walked in carrying a red-backed folder, the scent of a metallic cold perfume seeping into the air. Back then, no one knew that PDF file held a hidden cyan annotation layer that appeared only with the precise OCR filter, where a sterile line read, "Window 3, 214. The crash occurred at an unlit curve, the airbag firing 1.4 seconds before the impact pulse, a same-make escort car with a different plate vanishing off camera, and then everything slid into the dimple of justification: wet road, tired driver, a harsh fate. Only the 6 empty minutes refused reason, because they matched perfectly with an invoice for a data sanitation service signed by a shell company, while everyone who stood to gain performed just the right measure of sorrow, like people reciting a eulogy from memory. Amid that swell of feeling, Andre opened the USB, only rain, high heels on concrete, and a lock snicking on a service gate, 3 sounds repeating like a haunting refrain, opening for him a path utterly different from grief's procession, the path of structure, seals, signatures, delegations of authority, and an internal IP chain logging a sign-in at 2:14, the very time the annotation mentioned, to transfer Samantha's e-signature rights to a temporary proxy under the pretext of emergency handling. Something she had never accepted in their fierce debates over professional ethics. Andre traced the invoices from Samantha's final 2 weeks and found one small oddity. She paid for a spool of rare cyan thread used for hand binding, the same kind that often sat in Pamela's coat pocket, the woman who took data housekeeping as a license to arrange everything before audits. The tiny detail lit a suspicion at once absurd and chilling, that Pamela was only the keeper, the executing hand of a deeper shadow handler, the one who wrote the regulatory frame from the start, who nested the silence clause like a deadbolt, who never stepped into light but operated through procedural gaps made legitimate. Meanwhile, Joey, Bill, Nicole, and Ted, each perched on a different ledge of advantage, all had reason to let the adjustment pass: instant disbursements, block voting power, the wiping of old violations, or the laundering of a dubious contract. They were careful like people crossing black ice, no one pushed, no one pulled, letting the weight of quiet do the rest. Andre had nothing but 6 blank minutes, an unsent note on Samantha's phone saying if the adjustment goes through without my wet signature, look at Pamela, and a tremulous PDF with peeled back layers. Yet precisely this scanned bundle traced a logical curve: 2:14 gate opened, 2:16 proxy granted, 2:20 cameras blind, 2:26 car exits. Near midday the e-signature stamped Samantha's name onto a supplemental addendum, legitimizing the special agreement and triggering the first transfer to an anonymous account whose path fed into a charity with a spotless-sounding mission. Andre broke the problem down. To crack a silence clause, you must prove the will was coerced, prove Samantha did not decide freely to sign, but once the wet signature is erased and the e-signature bears valid delegation, every argument loops back to formal liability. He chose a rougher road: seek matter, scent, fiber, time. He returned to the rainy lot, requested independent extraction from the car's airbags, matched it to the GPS timecode of a nearby traffic cam, and found a non-random 1.4-second skew. A technician said such drift appears when a device has interfered with sensors, a micro-nudger that forces steering, producing an angle that lowers visible damage yet raises the chance of an accident ruling. Pamela could not install that on her own, which meant a field team, which meant Handler existed as a mute switchboard coordinating dirty work. Another night, Andre reopened Samantha's red folder, found a sliver of cyan thread peeking from the spine, tugged, and discovered a hand-marked draft where Samantha slashed through the silence clause and annotated, "Never sign without independent audit." The ink there was still new, likely from the final day, and it pushed Andre toward a choice only a half-madman embraces: go public immediately and collide head-on, or step back to follow Handler's trail. He stepped back, knowing a mind that can write a framework to kill without touching would gladly salt the earth if confronted. He entered their game, feigning quiet to let the adjustment keep flowing, while building a covert dam by sending the hand draft to an off-record junior attorney able to file it as late emerging evidence if litigation ignited. At the same time, Pamela stood between two blades. Handler demanded she lock the files and accept her promotion, while her old, threadbare conscience, never strong enough to save anyone, sometimes weak enough to shake a hand, left her staring too long at Samantha's photograph in the chapel. That wavering moment broadcast the perfume Nicole had worn at a recent party onto Pamela's coat, a scent trail that led Andre to door 3, the equipment room, where the auxiliary network cable had been yanked at 2:14 and reinserted at 2:20, tagged with a tiny tape triangle, the internal sigil of the data sanitation crew. When Andre fit the final pieces, the board flipped unexpectedly, not in court, but at the bank. A fraud guard flagged the second special agreement transfer because the money was about to enter a fund in Samantha's name, a charity whose mission read like apology, support for accident victims. Handler was not just laundering guilt and paperwork, but embroidering a halo of virtue around it so that anyone who opposed would feel they were striking a good. The choice was no longer black and white, it was barter: expose truth and dismantle a fund bearing the name of the dead, or let the fund live and admit that justice had been bent. Andre knew Samantha would choose truth. The margin note was not only a rejection of the silence clause, it was a professional creed, so he threw the switch, the hand draft, the airbag timing, the scent prints, the 6 minutes of rain, everything to a veteran data reporter. The chain reaction came at once: bank freeze, board suspension of the adjustment, Pamela crumpling into a muddied confession that she was only the gatekeeper, and Handler, like any shadow of sufficient age, slipping out of frame, leaving a single gift behind. A new blank interval in the server logs, another 6 minutes erased at precisely 2:14 on another night. Fairmont Crest returned to its rhythm as if nothing had happened beyond whispers, but Andre, on the nights after the funeral, still heard rain in the lot leaking from the USB, its volume fixed while its meaning grew heavier, because he understood the real haunting did not lie in death, but in the practiced fingers that turned death into adjustment. And when he opened door 3 for the last time, he found only a scrap of paper scrawled in cyan ink: "Adjustment kills no one, ambition kills," a message signed with a tilted triangle, as if to remind him a faceless hand needs no name, it only needs 6 empty minutes to rewrite history, one more time. Before we close, look again at the pattern we've uncovered: a 6-minute blackout, a signature that wasn't a signature, a fund that redeems the very mechanism that may have killed its namesake. If this was merely a tragic accident, why does every breadcrumb lead to a locked door labeled 214? Why does every file we open contain one more layer of sanitized metadata, one more triangle of tape, one more hint that someone is editing the narrative in real time? Here's what still doesn't add up. The airbag skew shows interference, not fate. The proxy authorization appears exactly when the cameras go dark. And that cyan thread, trivial, forgettable, it ties a living hand to a dead document. If Pamela is just the gatekeeper, then who writes the rules of the gate? Who decided that a silence clause should spring to life only when the woman who rejected it can no longer speak? And who benefits most when grief itself becomes a financial instrument dressed up as charity? In the next chapter, we'll test the weak points of the cover story. We'll reconstruct the sensor data frame by frame, track the escrow path of this special agreement, and pressure test the board members who signed off with their eyes politely shut. We'll also follow the scent trail back to door 3 and ask whether the triangle mark is a calling card, one that's been hiding in other files all along. If you've noticed a discrepancy in the timelines, caught a shadow in the corner of the frame, or recognized that triangular sigil from another case, drop it in the comments. Your tip could be the hinge that swings this door wide open. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who still thinks accidents are tidy. Samantha deserves more than a sanitized conclusion, and so does every story rewritten in the dark. When the lights come back on, we'll be waiting at 2:14 with receipts.